Is it doing it? Yeah, I see the dots. I see the dots. It's doing it. Hello, VOD people. There we go. Centered. So, my campaign efforts went much better last weekend than they did, last weekend than they did the weekend before. Yeah, that's right. So, I really feel like a recent shift in my work schedule has kind of fucked me up. Um, it's so silly. I just work on Mondays now where I didn't before, and I also am part of a Fallout Live play, which you can see on Twitch Mondays around like 5:30 PST. If I remember, I'll have to put a link down below. It's been a good time so far. We're only 2 sessions in at time of recording, April 21st. But my Mondays are more clogged than they used to be, partly due to my own, you could just not playing that Fallout game. It's like, yeah, I'm gonna though. I want to though. And then the work shift kind of happened. And so it's kind of been screwing with me. But even more than that, I also had been feeling like I wasn't devoting enough attention to some things. Like, whenever I prepare for a session of a game, I try to think about what I'm going to need immediately, and then I try to build out from there because I'm going to naturally run out of time. And so, you know, you do it that way so you have the most important part first, and then you spread out to second most important, third most important, so that if you get cut off, well, at least you got the most important bit that's going to become immediately relevant first. And while I had been doing that, I hadn't been allowing as much time for preparing for my game shop game sessions, because I was using the time to do other things. And so last week, I made a concerted effort to actually get into it. I devoted both hands to I devoted both hands to preparing for the session, and I think it was better for it. It was better for it. And honestly, on a life scale, I really think about devoting two hands to things because there's so often where you want to do a bunch of things or you need to do a bunch of things, and so you don't give it the attention that it deserves. And when you can't help it, then you can't help it, right? Sometimes you get stuff piled on you and there's just no other choice and you have to do the best you can. But there are times where you can help it, even if it's, a little painful to do so. Scaling back sucks, but sometimes it's necessary. I simultaneously felt bad about not getting some other things done last week, as I did good about actually getting back into, in this case, prep. The players don't know it, but they're on level 5 of 6, spoilers, of my giant pyramid dungeon, the Tomb of Akhmet-Set. On this floor, there are 5 powerful demons that are trapped here, and they act as anchors for a seal that prevents any kind of passage further down to the 6th and final level. And I had a realization over the weekend, there should be like a hand motif so that it's actually another spoiler, a bigger spoiler. So if you're playing in my Game Shop game currently, please do not listen to this. But there is a secret hidden 6th demon that keeps everything in play. And I had a thought earlier last week. I think a better design for this level would be to have a very clear hand motif. And then have it be 5 demons instead of 6. And the fifth one is secret. One, I don't think I have a strong idea for like all 6 of the demons. So cutting one of them would just be good in general, I think. That's another ramble I'm going to have for a bit, but we'll get to it. But also, I think if there were a hand motif involved in the rune, and then people beat like these 4 demons and they thought they were done, they were like, well, there's clearly the symbol. It's not actually in the current game, but I think it would be better if the rune, the master rune that they encounter first, was in a hand shape. So then when they have like 4 demons down and the thing's still going, but it seems like they've gotten through all the rooms, they would go, well, the hand motif, there should be a fifth one. I think that'd be a great backdoor, because you want ideally players to figure things out themselves without someone just like telling them the answer. And while there's a certain amount, uh, I have an affection for old school D&D, or at least hearing about it. But one thing that definitely I don't think I would like, and I've gotten a bit of a taste of it, and I'm like, I kind of don't like it, is just letting the players spin their wheels and try to figure it out. Um, you want players to figure things out themselves, and you want to be okay with players not figuring things out themselves. Like, you want it to be okay for them to not figure it out and then not move forward. But, or for players to be stuck and then have to problem solve. And while that's good, it can also be, one, unfun for players that get stuck, but also, two, kind of unfun to watch as players just kind of fiddle around and kind of whatever. I've watched in real time as the GM for the Shadowdark game I'm in has just watched us mess with a puzzle of some kind of trying to solve one way or the other and resisting saying anything. It's not great. So if you can make some signs that make it a little easier than just putting it together with like no real evidence or anything, or trial and error and purely trial and error, that's good. So I think the revision of this floor is going to have a hand motif. So when you kill 4 demon lords and then there's a fifth one missing, but you don't know it yet, but the rune still hasn't activated, you can go, well, the hand motif would mean there'd be 5. We've only fought 4. Where's this fifth one? And they're in like a hidden room somewhere. As it is right now, not sure what I'm going to do. We'll see. But basically, with the Game Shop game, when we picked up, I'm thinking we picked up right after they had fought this giant skull. And they walked forward into a chamber that was kind of. This chamber is inspired by like the Sedlec ossuary and things like that, which is, for those who don't know, this big religious temple that's made of bones, like tons of skulls and stuff. So they enter this big skull-filled chamber with skull pillars and walls, and there were doors to in all the cardinal directions. They came through the south door. There was a door east. There was a door west. There was a door north. But the door north, this room did not have this thing until I like sat down and devoted thought to it, and I really can't help but pat myself on the back because I think this is cool. Shout out if you agree. But on the northern door, there's this fleshy mass that is this blackened, withered heart that has ventricles that spiderweb out over the sides, the walls to like either side of the mass. Which, at least one player locked onto and was like, what's up with that? What's up with that? In this room, and it was quickly established when initiative got rolled and things started happening. Basically, skulls would detach and fly up and try to latch on to the characters, and then their bites would strip flesh and blood from the player's characters, and then that flesh and blood would be added to the distant heart that started beating. And then once they had drained enough hit points, then the a bigger, fleshier demon, Lord of the Pit, would materialize and start attacking, and it'd be this whole thing. So that was the plan. That is not what happened. I know about how much damage my players do, and this kind of challenge was going to be you're going to be swarmed by these little enemies. I was trying to really think about a principle that Sly Flourish, Lazy Dungeon Master, has talked about as far as fights go that I think I could do with thinking about more, is he will talk about lightning rods and sin eaters. He'll talk about parts of the fight that are designed for players to flex cool abilities they have and that they like using, lightning rods. And they will also, the other one is having enemies or setups that kind of absorb, so to speak, the powerful abilities that players have that can potentially upend encounters normally. I was thinking about it a little bit in this thing because I thought, okay, they're going to be swarmed by skulls. The skulls are the skulls are a nuisance. They're easy to hit, they're easy to destroy, but there are a lot of them. The Dragon Rider player has a dragon that, because of, decisions that I made and decisions that they made, has this flay ability where they put out this psychic wave that can damage things in cones. And I have another player that has this Thor's hammer is clearly what it's modeled after, but you throw this thunder hammer and you can stun a big group of enemies. So I thought, okay, cool. They're going to be able to do that, but also there's going to be a big swarm, so they'll be able to cut down the swarm, but the swarm will be swarming them, and there we go. I did not have enough skulls come at them all the time. Dual-Bladed Scorpion, welcome. Dual-Bladed Scorpion has said, if skulls are a nuisance, we can donate them to the Skull Throne. That we can. Always skulls for the Skull Throne. I thought that if I threw 20 skulls at the players initially, and then it spawned 1d6 more skulls each turn, that would be sufficient. It turns out it was not sufficient, which will happen. I started rolling a d12 instead because I thought it'd be fun. I see encounters that are roll, this d6 more raiders come or something like that. So I thought that'd be fun. But because of the variable number, it also meant that, if I rolled even a so-so number, they carve through them pretty quickly. I thought it would be kind of a fun game on the GM side. The skulls, they latch onto you, they take flesh and blood from you, and they add it to the demon heart at the back of the room. And then once they've drained enough, the demon pit lord that the heart belongs to reconstitutes and becomes a new fight. So I thought it'd be a fun game mechanic from the GM perspective. Oh, I'm trying to see once the enemies take enough hit points off of the characters, something happens. But that super did not happen. Something else happened that hindered this fight. There's another decision I made, but it's just kind of in the moment. 2 sessions back, I talked about how the players needed to get through this one door by piling gold, silver, and bronze totems that they would have won from the dungeon into the hands of a statue that would then go down once it was heavy enough and open a door. But the players skipped the whole level, got up there, and then when they were looking for stuff to offer, they just threw all the magic items they weren't using in there. And I decided that even though it hurt me as a GM spiritually, the Akhmet set, that's an impressive offering, fit for a king. So he blessed them with this thing. He gave them this boon, the Akhmet set's radiance. And I basically improvised, enemies that attack you for the next hour will have to make a wisdom save or else be scared off from attacking you. And it hasn't been an hour in game yet. So in this fight with the skulls, in addition to my players just being capable, there was also that extra barrier to the skulls latching on. So like some of them were able to, but also the players did something else, which is fine because it's players paying attention to what's going on and reacting accordingly. Which is players, in addition to like smashing down the skulls, there were players who like went out of their way to damage the heart and try to stop the heart. It's bleach. Uh, Trying to stop the heart from doing whatever it was doing. And between those two, they were able to handily, eventually, the monk player in a co op with uh, the dragon, the dragon rider's dragon, ripped the heart in half as one final show, which is pretty cool for them. It foiled me as a GM, but it's cool for them, and that works. That works almost as well. It's fine. I say this a lot, but as a GM, you'll always have another chance. The players, maybe not so much. So then the room starts collapsing, and they have to like hurry through that room before they're all buried in a collapse in an avalanche of skulls, which was a pretty cool push. Something that I forgot to talk about was early on when they first opened the doors to the skull room. They were looking in. They weren't going in. This is something that I've been thinking about recently. I'm going to call it the player push, in that I think it's very important that you push players. As much as I like when players take things seriously and are cautious, it can sometimes slow the game down where the doors are open, the room is ahead, but the players are just kind of talking, shouting, and otherwise just hanging out just beyond the door because they don't want to go in. You know? In this case, I did do a player push because they had initially opened the door to the room of skulls, and then the wizard, the demon summoner that they had found here, who is trapped and can't get out, uh, for his own reasons, cast like wall of force, pushing them into the room and separating them from him because he was going to do something behind their backs. Only for the players to go, hey, one of us can teleport people as long as we like know where they are. Let's teleport him in here with us. And then they did that, to which he was shocked because he can't teleport, and he definitely, the players definitely had some fun fucking with him as he was all like, "You can you get me out of here?" And they were just basically like, "I don't know, man. It's kind of hard, you know. It's kind of hard. It's really strenuous to do that. I'm not sure I can again." And then teleport something else. Be like, "Yeah, you know, it's kind of what it is." So they had fun fucking with him, but you know, I also kind of pushed them into the room using an NPC that was there at the time, and I haven't seen like a video about this, but I feel like there's something there that you could talk about, you could think about. The player push, like not forcing the players into a confrontation necessarily, but like when the players are outside of a room and they've opened a door and there are enemies in there, like in theory, the enemies could just come forward and attack them, but that kind of sucks. Stories have things that push characters into situations instead of having them hover like just outside rooms all the time. But obviously, you'd want to be careful. Like, I don't want to take away the player's agency in that I don't want, if they don't want to go, if you open the doors to a room and then don't want to go in and then close the doors and go, I'm going to go somewhere else, that's totally fine and that should be fine. In theory, you could say, oh, random encounters, and like, yeah, I guess. Yeah, I guess. But they did that, and they fought the skulls. They did a good job. They totally foiled that room, and then got semi pushed through to a different room, which could have been a little dangerous as far as time and engagement goes, but it was ultimately okay. The room beyond this one, and as these are all things I'm taking from my shot at like Dungeon 25 last year. My shot. Yeah. And this room was like a gate of will. Basically, a portion of this room is blocked off by what is functionally a portion of astral space. You move through astral space by your mind and not by your physical extremities. At least that's what I've heard, and that's how this room works. So it was a question, I basically decided if you had an intelligence of 18 or higher, you would move through no problem, no big deal. And everybody else would have to make rolls. But just making rolls is boring, so I decided they'll have to make rolls, and if you fail, you'll get a level of exhaustion as you start getting shredded by the the astral plane, basically the psychic pushback. And so from there, my idea was okay, so this challenge is really more about I'm going to be asking people, how do you try to fortify your mind? How do you try to get through? And this is kind of a soft role playing thing. If you could give me a good reason, I might give you a bonus. I'd give advantage, certainly, but I might do something else depending on what you thought of and what you have. The teleporter guy was like, can my dragon teleport people across? And it's like, no. And he's like, oh, okay. So the wizard they were with got through easily, no problem. The monk player made the argument that they have stillness of mind, and even though the effect of that is about like ending charm effects and things, like he's done a bunch of meditation and stuff, and he said it a little better than that, and that was good for me. So sure. The dragon rider player, the ranger player, said, "Hey, my dragon's got pretty good intelligence. My intelligence, I don't have a modifier to it at all. My intelligence is like 12 or 10 or something. But could the dragon try to like compensate for me or like wrap around me? And since their whole thing is working together, and they actually do have a thing where they can share a spell. The dragon acts as a conduit to share a spell from the player to other people, and they work together a little closer than that with some other features that they have, some house ruled, some not. I thought, sure. And then the barbarian player, who's really really good at stuff like this, kind of like taking the world in the moment, the role play kind of stuff, definitely a good guy for this, basically brought up a time in the campaign that was running before we were doing this thing, where he said, hey, there was a time where we were fighting this creature that tried to rule over us with fear. And in that time, I tried to go back to, they're a Leonin player and they're like a barbarian. They got like this savage hunter thing going on. And so he was like, and in that, during that time, I tried to deal with that emotional stress, that kind of like attack on my mind and on fears attacking on my mind. I tried to deal with it by like going back to the savannah and the hunt, and drawing upon like my ancestors before me, and stuff like that. He was very convincing. It was very cool. I had no problem giving him advantage for that. And then the bard basically wanted to try to like play music and focus on the chords and kind of like angle themselves that way. It's pretty cool. I gave everybody advantage because their different reasonings were good. People rolled. I wanted an 18 or better. And weirdly enough, one by one, everybody started getting a 19 and making it, which is pretty cool. And also comical, because the wizard is over on the other side. Is like, these people will never make it through. And like they start making it through, and he's like, oh, well, certainly the barbarian, stupid as he is, would not. And the barbarian makes it through fine. He's like, what? So the bard is the only one that doesn't make the roll. At a critical moment, he says, like, his string snaps and he loses focus. Now, here's the thing. I had not thought that the game was going to continue too far past the point that I'm about to describe. But at the same time, I guess it's good that it got used. And a third thing, I could complain about something that I also complained about last week. But in the campaign that these characters were in before we started doing this big desert pyramid tomb thing, in the previous campaign, they had obtained a great boon from one of the three great sages because the other two were killed by the antagonist of that campaign. And this boon was the boon of courage. And it does two things. One, it makes you immune to fear, but I felt that that wasn't good enough. That felt like a really minor effect for where they were in the game. And also, just in general, this is supposed to be a legendary boon. Come on. So the other thing that it did was it effectively gave the characters legendary resistance. In my game, I copy MCDM, and if my enemies have legendary resistances, they're tied to something and cost them something. Like, the example I always come back to is I once ran this sexy fox spirit because I am a weeb, and she charms people. And her legendary resistance basically only worked if she released someone that she had charmed. The logic being that her magic is stretched too thin at a critical moment, and that's just how it goes. The idea is she's going to be charming people a lot, and so, hey, if you have to relinquish one for like a save, that's the cost. I don't do legendary resistances normally, is my point. I gave my players a normal legendary resistance, and that all of them, with the boon of courage, one, were immune to fear, and two, drawing upon the boundless will in the face of adversity, once per day, they can draw on that to overcome something, to simply overcome based on sheer determination and will. You would think this would come up a lot more often, but players even joke, oh yeah, I forgot about that. Here, the bard did do that. So the bard makes it through. The bard almost fails, does that, makes it through, which I also found kind of funny because that's such an anime thing. This wizard is over here going, no, no. I bet some of them at least, the barbarian at least, will be too stupid to make it through this gate, and I'll have to help them or something. Ugh. And then everybody makes it through, except for the bard who fails, and then makes it through just on like will. It's absurd. At least it's absurd to him. And he reacted appropriately, like, what? What? Impossible. But of course, with the boundless bounty of will and determination, nothing is truly impossible. So that was kind of fun. And they actually used the damn thing, which is something I complained about last week and will also complain about this week. I may even go off the rails for like my one and only not commenter special, but whatever. So they got through that. They got to the cusp of the boss room because they're currently pursuing one of the bosses, one of the five demons that holds this whole sealed place together, the Queen of Seven Swords. But since one of the players was leaving early and they were already down to 4 before that point, they were like, hey, we're missing our paladin and also our barbarian's going to leave early. Let's end early and save the boss fight for next time, if that's cool. And everybody else was like, that's cool. And I said, that's cool. And so we ended a little early, and that's how that session went. I once heard advice that if you have a boss fight, you should try to start the session with the boss fight. Or at the very least, you should try to avoid having a boss fight at the end of a session. Because people get tired over the course of a session, and boss fights are just better engaged with if everyone is fresh. So we ended early, but I totally had no problem with that in this case, because I think it will be better to kick things off right than to, not do that. I think it was some advice from Justin Alexander, who is, from what I've heard, a little questionable about trans stuff, but does also have a famous blog about D&D advice for a good reason. So if it could just manage to say Jaquays correctly, we can all just go ahead and pirate his book. Buy his book. Buy my book. Buy my book. Buy my book. That's how he should have sold. So everybody, over the age of 30 could be like, all right, I see you. Anyway. And then Sunday, more ninja nonsense. The Shinobi assault continues. And man, they just blasted through the stuff on Sunday. Sunday before last, a couple people lost characters, and a person who did not lose a character was the angriest about it of all. And really brought the mood down. Last Sunday, things were a lot better. A lot better. We picked up. We were on the tail end of a fight in a long hallway of swinging blades, and there was one remaining ninja enemy out of two that were fighting them still. And one of the players, I forget, I think shot an arrow. Somebody shot an arrow, or somebody shot a dragon of fireworks. I forget, but that enemy was dispatched pretty quick. Basically, what has been happening with all of these is because the first one of the ninja layers, I designed them all as one-shots. And so the first one they did, there was a middle part that drug a little bit, which then means that every single time we've been ending like right before the boss, which is the fourth part of every one of these, because these are all 5-room dungeon designed as well. 5-room dungeon being a classic dungeon design that you can look up. It's basically like splitting a dungeon into 5 rooms or portions where you have a guardian or challenge at the beginning, and then you have, well, you can look it up. Though honestly, having the boss and like the room filled with loot and the reward is kind of weird, like to me. Kind of funky. Nobody said anything, but it feels kind of funky to me. Anyway, we've been consistently stopping right before the boss on each one of these after the first one. And apart from this time, which to me says that the other ones must work as one-shots, or they probably do. When I release them for free, you'll get to find out yourselves if you want. They did that, and then they moved into the room, which is the boss room for the Master of Blades. That's who they were going after. And basically, I gave one round where people could move and look for stuff, and then if nobody discovered the ninja before that one round was up, they would get a surprise round. This is something that I have written into other parts of these one-shots, these interconnected one-shots, not really one-shots, I guess. And I keep on like not quite having the heart for it. And also, there's somebody with decent I don't know. I have seen my GM, when the surprise is going to happen, give the thief present a roll to maybe sense it ahead of time or to pick up on something, a perception roll, basically. And I basically copy that. There's a thief pretty much every time because someone is a thief in the Sunday group that I'm running right now. So cool. They also have a ninja, or, Shadow Dark calls it the Raskadai, but they also have a ninja with them. That also makes sense, whatever. My point being, they searched. The surprise did not happen because one of the players had him and another player move over to some wall scrolls and like stab through them, and there was one enemy hiding in there who got immediately killed before the fight began. But it's also an exciting start off, so I also am down with it. The fight begins. Enemies burst out after the game is clearly up, and they fight. Now, I originally ran just the Master of Blades portion for my Game Shop group, and they all died. They all died, and they all died on the boss. And I have mentioned this to the other group, but what I did not say, because I thought it would just kind of suck and demystify it, which is why I'm doing it here, uh, is, and I think I even talked about it here in an earlier stream, but in an earlier stream, I did talk about it. The special technique that the Master of Blades has is called Tate, and it's named after a special move from the PS2 Shinobi video game. For our purposes, and in my game, basically what this is enemies with this technique can move up to a creature they want to attack, and they make a slash with their blade. And if that attack hits, they can move and hit someone else, make a slash. If that hits, they can move, and they can just keep doing this for as long as they have movement and other targets to slash at. How the ability originally worked was you do that, and then you roll a d8 for every successfully attacked enemy, and then everybody who got hit takes all the damage. So if you slash through if this enemy slashes through 3 players, you would roll 3d8 and they would all take 3d8. I thought that was so killer, so cool. I originally conceived of this ability for like a 5th edition thing, and then it never came up. They didn't fight that enemy. And I think that the direct translation was too strong. Hit points are generally lower in Shadowdark, and when I ran it originally for the other group, 3 people got, like 2 or 3 people got hit. I think it might have been 2, but even then, like they both took like 8 damage, and their hit points were pretty low. And so they just died. And one of the players even complained, like, so there wasn't really anything I could do there. Like, that kind of sucks. And I appreciated that feedback. And I was like, yeah. What I ultimately ended up doing was changing the ability where you just roll 1d8, and everybody who got struck just takes that 1d8 damage, is what I did this time around. And it worked better. The Master of Blades definitely had difficulty hitting in that they rolled a critical failure on their first attack right out the gate, which is pretty ridiculous. And I remember one of the players saying, "Oh, do enemies get like luck token rerolls?" And typically they do, but I hadn't done that for any of the other bosses. So I said, I'm not going to do it for him because I didn't do it for any of the bosses, but that would normally make sense. So he had a little bit of trouble hitting, but he eventually managed to hit like 2 people and, did like 5 damage to both of them. He ended up putting 2 of the player characters down. So it felt effective. And it didn't one-shot people necessarily, so it ultimately worked. He also has a move where he throws a bunch of shuriken and kunai that pin you in place, and then he gets advantage on attacking people who are pinned. That ended up not coming up as much as I would have liked, but I think it was because of some tactical shit. Ultimately, it worked okay. People won. They got his weapon. They looted the hell out of his back area, like, room number 5 with all the rewards and shit. And then they moved on to the next one, the last person, the last Ninja Master, which I didn't think they would have time for, but they did. And they really surprised me when they got through his whole lair super easily. So the last layer was the Master of Poison. First place, the whole thing is in a garden, and there's pollen falling in this garden that will slowly paralyze the characters the longer they spend in there. This was originally inspired by, I think it's got some weird name like the cow, the crown, the something, but there's this alternate version of Curse of Strahd, and I think it was made by Deficient Master, actually. who is a YouTuber that I like and think is very cool. I'm on a Discord with him. I don't freak out or anything because I am cool like that. But anyway, actually, the 5 room dungeon jam that I'm gonna be putting these out for, he is also like he's on the Discord for that's the Discord we're both on. And presumably he's gonna put out a video about 5 room dungeons or some shit. That'll be cool. I'll be part of the same collaborations, him and other big YouTube people that I'm like, wow, it's really cool. You're here. Again, I don't freak out because I'm a professional, but you get it. Diatribe aside, in this alternate version of Curse of Strahd, it's basically like a timed thing where you have the session. You have the session to find what you need, and then at the end of the session or towards the end of the session, Strahd or whoever attacks you. And you basically are just gonna die if you fail. And I think that's cool and evocative. And so that's what's inspired by this. I didn't make it as explicit here because also I'm really feeling like what I put together is not quite the style of game that my friend group on Sunday enjoys. So I took some of the pressure off. But normally, what I intend for it to be is if you don't finish, and it apparently would have been fine anyway, so whatever. But basically, this paralytic poison is falling from the sky constantly, and if you don't finish, the idea would be if you don't finish by the time of the end of the session, everybody seizes up, their hearts stop, and you won't die. And I think that'd be really cool as a premise. But in this case, I just said the pollen is falling and it's going to eventually paralyze you, and I just left it at that. But that was urgent enough. The first area was this garden clearing, and I had 2 poison ninja who had these chains that they were swinging, and they also had poison on these chains. I actually went back and forth about the poison because I really like the idea, and this goes back even to the Moonlit Castle and the Robin Goblin series. Like these flowers that are in the garden are paralyzing. If you rub against them, they're paralyzing. And I really like the idea of the ninja also having paralyzing poison that they use. But I felt like it'd be a little unfun, But, well, okay, I felt it would be a little unfun, but that didn't stop me because I'm not kind like that. What really stopped me was it felt like it would be too disconnected from poison, right? When you go through these different layers, I'm trying to have the gimmick, the special techniques that the ninja in here deploy. I'm really trying to have them be, really embody whatever it is. If it's fire, obviously. If it's blades, blades isn't just swords, it's also the throwing shuriken and kunai, pinning you to places. I kind of get into it that way. Master of Illusions, they're doing shadow clones. There's a second thing that I had them do and eventually change, but hopefully you get it. And honestly, in this instance, it really makes me miss a crunchier system that gives me more space to really encapsulate the ninja. So basically, if my friend that wants Pathfinder just waits for a couple weeks or waits until my guard is low and then it's like, do you want to do a revised version of the Ninja Castle, but it's like in Pathfinder, it just super work, and no guarantees actually. I may eventually I will do a crunchier version of this Ninja Castle premise again somewhere. I just don't know where and when. Probably not for a little while though. Back on target, I felt like just having the poison paralyze you. Like when you think of poison, you think about getting sick, you think about it damaging you. You don't really think about paralyzing. So even though it was a cool angle, I just kept it as an environmental angle, and then I just gave the ninja poisoned weapons that deal an initial D4 damage on you, and then every turn you make a Constitution saving throw, and if you don't, you take another D4 of poison. Even though a D4 is pretty small, Shadowdark is still a game where I currently have a level 3 fighter. That fighter has 11 hit points. And while there are plenty of other people that have higher hit point totals in the game that I'm in, Like, I think a really beefy person at level 4 is like 19 hit points. That's really tough. That's really strong. And even then, the weapons do a d6. So if you get like a 3 and then the poison damage, you get like a 2, that's still a considerable chunk out of your total. People had been worried about poison and putting off the poison one until later, so they had gotten enough gold and treasure to buy antitoxins from like this merchant guy that I put in there. So that made things easier. But basically, the first challenge was these poison ninja pop up from within the flowers, which they are immune to because, of course, they swing their chains. And then they hit people, they poison people, they deal damage, and then they could also like spend their turn to crouch in the flowers and like move around, making it harder for them to see, giving people disadvantage unless you run up and attack them. But if you run it into the flowers and attack them, you have a chance of getting paralyzed. One player, two players ran into the flowers. One of them ran in, got paralyzed, didn't get to attack. Other people continued firing from range or doing what they could. One player, who's one of the players that lost a character session before last and re-rolled a new character, which was a Basilisk Warrior. It's one of the classes that Shadow Dark has, one of the weirder ones, which is probably why people like it. This is the second time I've had somebody play a Basilisk Warrior, so like, yeah, and honestly, they're kind of cool. I can see why. Basilisk Warriors get advantage on poison saves. I thought maybe that player just like didn't remember that the flowers were poisonous or something. And there's a point where I even asked, like, okay, is that deliberate that you're running after this guy? I was like, no, I have advantage on poison saves. It was still reckless, but he did successfully save and then kill the ninja he was after. And then, they dispatched them quickly enough. I think part of what made this layer go by much faster is there were two different challenges that the players basically skipped through. Kind of. Challenge number 1 was swinging ninja chains in the field of poison. Next portion of the garden, the poisonous flowers are still here, but there's a path that splits into two ways, and then a twin-headed serpent comes out, and one of them will, from this point forward, only tell lies, and one of them from this point forward will only tell the truth. It was that bit, which a couple people got really a couple people joked about this being the bit, and then the snakes actually did the bit, and they were like, this is the bit. People had fun with that. And I'm smiling because GMs like it when you have fun with the stuff that they put in front of you. It's just that simple, folks. And so people, they basically tried to reason with the snakes and tried to play that game. I used an image of the serpents from Samurai Jack that pull the same gimmick, which was fun because a couple people also recognized the art that I was using as well. So that was cool. People reasoned for a little bit, but eventually one person like made a guess and felt fairly certain for reasons that I'm not sure of. And then was also like, and also the longer we stay here, the more paralyzed we will become, which is true. And I like that one player locked in on that. And so they went down the path and they were correct. And then they made it to, because that challenge didn't take that long. A talking role playing kind of thing can take a while. They didn't take that long with that. The next challenge was an obvious trap, because sometimes I like obvious traps. There was a pool of water. There was like a water fountain in like a clearing. And once the players got kind of around this fountain area, which one person went invisible and then snuck around and then saw that there was a woman waiting inside the fountain's water. And they were asking, oh, do they look like they're about to attack or something? And I said no. And they were like, okay, well, if they're not, okay. Everybody else just try to go around. And if she does something, we fight her. And if she doesn't, then let's just leave. So I had the woman pop out once people who were actually visible got close. And this woman, I used art from Red Ninja End of Honor, a video game that I like, a ninja video game that I like. And I basically had, or this woman basically, said, "Oh, travelers, my healing springs waters can restore your wounds and can restore poison, take away poison from any of you that are poisoned. Do any of you need help?" And the players all basically were like, "No, we're fine, thanks." Except for one player, the Basilisk, a warrior player, who kind of sniffed at it a little bit and uh you know has a flask and was like, "Can I take like a flask of the water?" And she said, "Sure." Only he said, out of character, "I'm thinking about like taking it and then like throwing it at an enemy to see if it's actually poisonous or something," because everybody was suspicious and just kind of moved on. And instead of having the lady just attack them anyway, she just kind of didn't, and they were like, "Okay," and they just kind of moved on. So that room was basically skipped. And yes, it was absolutely a trap. Basically, the water is poisoned, and if you drink it, you get poisoned. So, like, I like obvious traps sometimes. It's also kind of a role playing chance if you want to look at it that way, a role playing opportunity. But they just kind of skipped over that part, got through pretty quickly. Next was the boss. This is the same session. They're really snapping through these. The boss is a ninja with a kusarigama, which is like a comma, and then there's a chain attached to it, and then there's a weight attached to that chain, who is attached to the tongue of a giant snake that comes rumbling forward. Now, I did not give this boss very much health, but I felt like it was a good balance because this boss is very dangerous. And also, in addition to being dangerous, it kind of makes sense that if you're a poisoner, are you really very hardy? Like, maybe you have a good constitution and, like, yeah, I don't know, I guess you could sell it the other way. But like, I was thinking, poisoner, you probably weaken enemies. You're not much of a like straight up fighter, at least compared to other people, other bosses. He is in the snake's mouth, which means you can't just run up and melee him. You gotta ranged weapon that shit. Furthermore, he had his weapon, the serpent's kiss. This weapon did the poison effect that the other enemies had, but it stacks. If he hits you twice, the poison amount you take each turn, if you don't make a constitution save, is 2d4. If he hits you 3 times, it's 3d4. It stacks. It basically has a stacking poison effect, and then I wasn't able to find it in the moment, but he can also like latch onto and pull people. Because, Kusarigama do that, and I think that's cool. He did not last very long, and I also made a critical error in playing him because the more advanced ninja, including that lady in the water, which if I'd remembered this, maybe that would have gone a little differently, has this poison mist ability where they blow a cloud of poison mist that basically inhibits characters, gives them like disadvantage for a certain amount of turns because they're poisoned, they're nauseous. I didn't do that. And that would have meant more survivability for that boss. But instead, the boss swung at one of the players who used their shield to like guard against the attack, but like break their shield, which is a cool mechanic that I think is cool. And I had the enemy double down in frustration and attack that player again instead of doing the poison mist thing, which would have been more effective. So it's purely on me. But that's what happens. That's a human thing. You run the boss in a certain way and it's not as effective as it could have been. People ranged attack the shit out of that guy, and then one person, the ninja player who had picked up the gauntlets from the Master of Hands that let you Ninja Gaiden Izuna drop people, leapt at the guy, and I thought he was going to Izuna drop. And he's like, "Are you going to Izuna drop him, like with the weapons?" And he's like, "No, I'm going to just do the normal like sneak attack damage on him because that's more." Which fucking hurt a little bit. Like, come on, use. You're technically using the item, but like I don't know, man. But he ripped that guy out of there. The guy also got turned to stone because the basilisk warrior has this effect where they can lock eyes with someone as their action, and if they don't make a Constitution save, they turn to stone for like a D4 amount of rounds or something. So that also helped. Either way, the Master of Poison was very quickly no more. The snake fought for a little while longer, but they were ultimately able to hurt the snake enough to get it to fuck off, and then it slithered away. There was a cave that was revealed. They went down, they looked through the cave. In the background of the couple of different looting things, they had discovered signs explicitly talking about the Master of Puppets. And there was a moment where they were like, Master of Puppets? We haven't fought a Master of Puppets. You're like, no, you've not. They became suspicious. One player became suspicious of the merchant guy who always keeps finding them, thinking maybe they are the Master of Puppets. And so there was a little bit of like, I'm going to shake his hand. It's like, okay, he shakes your hand. His skin feels clay-like, and weirdly smooth on the other underside of his hand. But other than that, like nothing happens. You're like, okay. Which I thought maybe was too indirect, but the player later said in conversation out of character with the other players, it could be that guy is like a puppet or something himself, which is a good suspicion, I think. And so we ended on them buying stuff. If I'd had my wits about me, I would have tried to end with some cliffhanger, but oh well. And so next time, they have defeated all the ninja masters, but there's one final ninja master that they must defeat, the Master of Puppets. And so we're going to see how that goes, and that'll be the end of my Shinobi Assault series, playtesting anyway, for this whole thing. And then next month, for the 5-Room Dungeon Jam, I got to get them organized. I got to make a video. I got to make a video because that's part of the thing. It's part of the collaboration. And so look forward to that. There'll be a video about this stuff. If you've been following these, you'll be like, I know about these, and you can read the final version of them or the final version that I'm going to put out, which will be free on my itch page and blah, 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 blah. Should be cool. And those were those two games. Shadowdark went pretty cool. The Shadowdark game I'm in went fine. I don't really do diaries on that, but we looted, we had fun, we fought dudes, it was cool. Now, I talked about feeling like having less time earlier, and that is the truth. My new change to the work schedule has really gotten into my head, and I think for my own sanity, for my own feelings, this is going to be my last stream. At least for now. I'm going to stop doing this on Tuesday. I really think I need more time, and this is a place where I can reasonably cut. I would like to stream more in the future and actually like play games and shit. And originally when I started doing these streams, I wanted to get into the habit of like doing regularly, clearing the time to do something, and then I was going to move on to like I will do more streaming type stuff. I'd like to get into streaming because I have the delusion that maybe I can make some money from it eventually. But that's not going to happen right now. And because I want more time, I want to feel like freer, I'm going to stop doing this. So I appreciate you watching. VOD people, anybody who's popped in for any amount of time, except for that person last week. Thank you. There will be more. I just don't know when. And as an extra special treat, I'm going to do something a little more engaging. I have been thinking an awful lot lately about getting players to actually use the stuff you give them, and how do you give items, basically. How do you give items without it just collecting dust? The first time that I posted to Threads about my concern about making a sewer dungeon, but like it doesn't really kind of make sense for it to be a dungeon crawl exactly. What do I do? I got a ton of responses that were cool and neat and made me feel good because people are responding to something I asked. I posted shortly before before I started the stream. I posted the question like maybe, I don't know, like 10, 15 minutes before. I have, and I'm looking at my phone right now, 20 responses to this thing that I made. And I think it would be fun to go through them because I have opinions and I'm going to comment back to them, especially because I just thought it'd be fun. And that's going to be a little special extra thing that I do right now as this last stream for now. And the post that I made says, how do you give magic items that players will actually use that aren't crazy damage and stat buffs? I like those, but not all the time. A game I'm running has me a little sour grapes. I'm talking about the ninja thing. People aren't using the fantastical ninja weapons they're getting as much as I would like, but that's just sour grapes. A game I'm running has me a little sour grapes, but even in campaigns, people just don't seem to latch on to anything that's not an extra 2d6 fire damage. Could it really just be a group thing? And now, the responses, and my responses to those responses. The first one being, if they don't use it, take it away, and then have your monsters use it, effectively. A champion fighter who chugs potions as a bonus action, drinks a potion of haste, and then uses spell scrolls might change their minds. There are 4 likes, including my own, but that like is a polite like. Here's the thing. That's too antagonistic for me, in all honesty. Like saying, oh, just show your players how they should be doing it. If I were a player, I don't think I'd respond very well to that. It is something you can do. It's a little too pointed for me, which is probably what I'm going to say when I actually respond, because I'm going to respond to all these people. It's very nice that anybody responded to this shit of mine. There's a second person who says, players love immovable rods. Stuff with some fun spells are often cool, especially of they cast spells that feel really bad to use spell slots on. So basically, if it's an item that casts a spell that it's kind of a bummer to use a spell slot for, and the examples they use are find traps, locate object, etc. And they also suggest that alchemy jugs are always a hit. I responded to this one before we started by saying, good suggestions all, but that second one especially resonates with me. Thanks, because that's what I believe. Honestly, players love immovable rods. That only solves the problem once. I want to give items regularly, and I want people to use them, but people don't use spell scroll. They use spell scrolls sometimes. Potions just collect dust, unless it's a healing potion. That blows. So, immovable rod, okay, that's cool. That's like a one-time thing, though. Alchemy jugs are always a hit. They kind of are. I feel that, actually. Maybe that's the way. There's another cool person that said, make them cheap and easily obtainable so people don't hoard them just in case. Make them easy to use, like a free action. I don't know the rules you're playing by. That's a nice consideration. I appreciate that. I don't know the rules you're playing by. Otherwise, they'll just do whatever is most effective damage-wise in that moment. Remind them they have it. Make them useful out of combat, like a potion that helps you pick a lock or increases your awareness. I think, and I hope to tell this person this, but I think there's some really solid gold advice in this right there. Make them easily obtainable. I don't know about that. That is kind of good, but at the same time, maybe actually. Remind them they have it. This is an important one because I very much struggle. I very much struggle with how much or how little to tell people because I don't want them to feel like I'm playing the game for them. I'm super sensitive to this, but I'm sensitive to this so I sometimes don't give as much information or prompting as maybe it would be good to give. So I think that's pretty important. Make them useful out of combat, I think, is also a solid gold bit. You know, when people look for solutions and they think about the stuff that's useful out of combat, great, awesome. I need to tell this person, I think they gave some grade A advice. Another person responded to me saying, people forget they have things because words on paper are easy to forget. When situations come up and they are taken a bit of planning, ask them, hey, don't forget you also have things in your packs that might help in this situation. Keep on this till they start looking down at their own because they made it a habit. Eventually, as players, you won't have this problem anymore. You know, that's not bad. That's not bad. That's not bad. It conflicts with something that I need to work on, and it's still not bad. There's another person that said, make it harder to take long rests. When resources are low, those potions and scrolls look pretty useful. I already make it hard to long rest. Like I track time, which is I don't want to sound rude saying it, and that's always the fear of saying something over text that you'll sound rude. But like I do make it hard for long resting already. I keep track of time, and it actually takes 12 in-game hours to be able to benefit from a long rest again. People already can't long rest whenever they want, and I'm still having this problem. There's somebody that responded to that person saying, I'm not sure how much that'll help because now they have to hoard them even more because what if things keep being bad like this and we need them even more? Potions in general kind of suck because there's never any way to guarantee you'll find another one. So using one is effectively saying, well, hope I literally never need that ability again. Uh, that I feel like that actually is how players think sometimes, even if it's exaggerated. And there's a little bit of back and forth that those two have that I'm not going to devote time to. We're getting close to the end of my final stream for now, so we'll continue. Another person contributed to my question, saying add scenarios where they'd be incentivized in using them. Yeah, I guess that makes sense. I wrinkle my nose a little bit because I don't know. It seems like kind of a pain to have to constantly be making scenarios where the thing I gave you is useful. But at the same time, it is also solid advice, even if I only just did it sometimes. Another person said, bags of holding are always useful. We had a bag of holding also we had a bag of colding also that was useful because food slash preserving food actually mattered in the dense jungle. Immovable rod is always great. Items that help boost saving throws, ability checks are always great. Some players only care about damage dealing ones because once they've unlearned that behavior, or some players only care about damage dealing, but once they've unlearned that behavior, it can really change the game for better overall. It did for me at least. That person goes on a little longer too, saying, I'd also take into consideration what kind of obstacles slash hurdles your DM setting slash world will provide for them, and to try to subtly throw those items into the game. They may not appreciate them when they find them initially, but that moment of clarity slash realization when it does come in handy is always sick. I never judge magic items the DM gives us anymore because of moments like that. Interesting. It's an interesting thought. And they said, lastly, so in a recent Tomb of Annihilation campaign they were in, they played, it says, a super stealthy Bugbear Ranger rogue hybrid Gloomstalker assassin. They came into a ton of gold through various shenanigans. The DM asked them what they'd be looking for outside of damage dealing items because he had plans already for that. And they said it made us do more research into what would be helpful. I, the poster, ended up getting both a Cloak of the Manta and Cloak of the Bat, still two of my most favorite magic items I've had in game. This doesn't dispel what they're advising, but personally, in my games, you have to quest for magic items. I don't like buying magic items unless it's a one-time artifact auction that mirrors a certain anime I like. In general, I don't like buying magic items in my stuff. But some of their advice I think is good. Someone else contributed, I saw stop giving them things they want. They're forced to use the other things. Interesting. Okay. Put them in situations where one of those items will be wildly useful. Oh, you get dropped into an underwater pit and you got to swim through a tunnel. Hope you remember you've got potions/scrolls to help you. Oh, you stumble into a lair of a fire immune acid spewer. Better retreat and attune to that half plate of resistance, etc., etc. This one is one that I wanted to talk about in particular because I kind of saw it while I was scrolling through and I only had 6 responses to my question. I talked kind of about this last week, so this shouldn't be a surprise. Freedom of choice for the player needs to mean freedom to not do things. I'm very hesitant, or I kind of don't like the idea of constructing a challenge that means that you're supposed to use X item. Because then what if they don't? It's a big, problem. My GM friend, has a big problem about this because he would make challenges where it's built assuming that you're going to use your items to make it easier, and then people wouldn't, and the fight would be harder. And his problem is, well, it's too hard. It's too hard, and it takes a long time, and it's a drag if you don't use the items. But you don't use the items, so then I have to make it easier. And I would be kind of an asshole, and I would say, well, okay, then the fight's harder. Players need to be able to choose not to use the stuff that you give them, which is kind of part of the problem overall. Freedom of choice also means freedom to not use the stuff that you're given. But when your GM also feels like, I wish you would use the stuff that I give you, what exactly do you do? But in this case, I just generally it'd technically work, but I don't want to make a fight where you're supposed to use some specific items, because then I feel like it's too pushy and it's too much. There's another person who said, have NPCs use them in cool, useful ways as a demonstration so the players will see their value. This is a simple idea, but I also feel like it could come off as condescending, if only because my GM friend had talked to me once about how, I thought about having an NPC basically do all the effective stuff that I wish you guys would do, so you would learn, but I thought that might come off as a little rude. And the description made me immediately think, yeah, that sounds pretty rude. I don't like that. Not everybody is as sensitive as I am, so perhaps it's good advice. Perhaps it's good advice. It makes logical sense. It makes it work. It sounds like it would work on a practical level. Players aren't practical, so no guarantees. And the last person, at least, that I can see on here at this moment, has said to my question, to my post, I love nothing more than giving them weird items that don't make sense and then having it sit in their inventory for ages. And then the moment arrives when they need exactly that thing and they go nuts. That sounds like a great moment if the player remembers it in the first place. Which maybe they do, maybe they don't. Also, I was kind of complaining about stuff collecting dust in the inventory in general, so kind of doesn't help me with my problem. Though, I mean, that is a cool feeling, I'm sure, and I'm glad they shared. It's really cool how the 2 times that I've posted like role playing type stuff, Threads has really popped off in like answers. I really appreciate that. People joke about Threads, and I usually go to Threads to post things that I just don't expect anybody to see. And then a couple of my online homies see it, and I'm like, yo. But in this case, a bunch of people saw this, and it's kind of fun. Anyway, I think that's going to do it for me for now. So I just hope you have a good rest of the day. If you found this as your first one, there's a playlist if you want to hear me ramble more. And yeah, I'll catch you around.